I'm Cass Hasford and I am here with Yvonne Arrowsmith, Interim CEO at RBH. And we're here to talk about a really important campaign, International Women's Day. But before we delve into that, Yvonne, I'm lucky enough to work with you on a daily basis, so I know all about you. Do you want to introduce yourself so others can get to know you?
Yeah, happy to, Cass, thanks. So I've been around quite a long time, I would say. I've worked in social housing for 30 years. I've been a group operations director, a CEO, an interim CEO, board member, chair of care and support committee, chair of customer services committee. Before all of that in my life, I was a nurse for 10 years. I was a ward sister by the time I was 23, managed a coronary care unit. So I've always been kind of quite career orientated.
Why is International Women's Day important and what do you think it's asking us to think about?
So I've been involved in International Women's Day for a number of years, and I think it's around raising the profile of women's achievements, what they can do. I think there is still not equity across genders, but in so many other areas as well. And so I think it's really important to showcase the work that women do, the work that women can do, and help to empower the generations coming through, really.
So this year's theme, we touched on, embrace equity. What does this mean to you?
So for me, I think it's about fairness, and I think it's about never letting preconceived ideas about people kind of mar your thinking or what you believe that they can do, what they can achieve. Because I think it's quite easy to have those preconceived ideas. And I think it's important that we just kind of say, okay, blank canvas, what am I looking at? You tell me about you. And I think that's what equity really means.
So what actions can RBH do or is doing to put solid inclusion foundations in place?
I think RBH has been doing quite a bit, looking at kind of race equality networks, thinking of equality and diversity. But I think there's a lot more to do. So certainly as part of the work, the recovery plan we're working on at the moment, we're thinking about how we make our services much more accessible for people, how we give people those kind of same opportunities regardless of anything. And, that will form, I think, a lot of our thinking over the next 6 months is how do we improve that? I don't think anyone's got it completely right. I think there's always room to grow.
What women inspire you, Yvonne?
Well, it's quite interesting because it's probably people that you've never heard of. So, people that I've encountered, women that I've encountered through my career.
So what traits did they have?
And when I look, the one that always sticks with me is somebody that I met literally, 30 odd years ago. She was a ward sister. Her name was Sister Neil, and I remember it now, and I remember her. And she was somebody, so I was a student nurse, she was the ward sister. And she would never ask you to do something that she wasn't willing to do herself. And so, if a patient asked for a bedpan, she'd go and get it. If a patient wanted anything, she didn't expect you to do it, even though you were the more junior. And I can remember making the beds with her one day, and I was thinking, why is she making the beds? She's the ward sister. And afterwards, she said to me, it's my one opportunity in the day to talk to the patients, one-to-one, just, chat, see how they're feeling. It gives me a lot of information. She never raised her voice. She never needed to raise her voice. So she really kind of had a presence that commanded respect. And just kind of her teaching stayed with me right the way through. I've also had people that I don't admire. And the kind of, the lessons that you learn. So you learn as much from a good boss as a bad boss.
Have you faced barriers in your career due to being a woman? And if you did, how did you overcome them?
It's quite interesting, actually, because when you think about things like that. So I think I've been quite lucky. I think housing, is pretty good at looking at people as individuals and giving them opportunities. I think perhaps my generation give ourselves barriers. I think that, I was brought up in a generation where most of the leaders were men, where most of the CEOs were men. And I can remember when I first got offered my first CEO role, and I came off the phone and my youngest daughter was there, and she was about 17 at the time. And I went, they've just offered me the job. And she went, well, of course they did. And in her head, there was no barriers. It was like, well, why didn't you think that they would? And one, for me, that was good. We're doing a good job with the next generation because they don't see the barriers. They do think they can do whatever they want to do. We're bringing up, I think, from strong women going forward. So the barrier was in my head. But then there was actual barriers, and it was the same job, and I then got to sit on, it was called the G15, 15 largest housing associations in London. There were 12 men, 3 women. Mm. And a lot of the men were old school, so probably the generation above mine, really. And they would just cut us off or ignore us. So whenever the women spoke, you could literally, it was almost just disregarded. So we basically plotted, the 3 of us went out, we had lunch and we said, right, okay, how are we going to tackle this? And it was around being really supportive to each other. So it would be one of us would make a comment or make a suggestion, and before they could almost blank us, another woman would step in and go, I really agree with what you're saying there. And so it was about almost forcing them to hear us. I'm pleased to say that did change over time and we did get much greater representation.
Have you been in a situation where the idea of being a woman and powerful are not compatible? Touched on it then, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it isn't necessarily so much as it not being compatible, being a woman and being powerful. I think the difficulties that we often face are the fact that we also have families and children and trying to balance everything. I've spoken to young women before talking about, what it's like, and they go, well, what do you have to give up to do it? And I said, do you know what? I said, you can have it all as a woman, but don't forget you will end up doing it all. So you still end up doing most of the childcare. You still end up doing most of the housework and shopping and everything. I'm sure there are some more enlightened men coming through now, but certainly when, I did it all. So you can have it all, but you've also going to do it all. So you'd be pretty knackered, is what I would say. So I don't think it is that it's not compatible. It's just how do you fit it all in? And I just think a lot of how we manage to do that depends on who our leaders are. So I was always really clear with all of my staff, you never miss a nativity play. You never miss a sports day. Work is not that important. And so you give people permission to actually balance that life a much better way of doing it. Whereas certainly, in the kind of 80s, 90s, you were expected in a power suit in the office, 8 till 7, Monday to Friday. It didn't give you a lot of time for your children. So I think we are gradually shifting that now, which is really positive.
How do you influence people inside and outside work?
So I think inside, I've always been really honest. And I think having that authenticity that people know, you'll tell them the truth. You don't try and hide things. Even if it's not really what people want to be hearing, it's who are you kidding otherwise? Are you just kidding yourself or are you trying to kid other people? So I think being really honest with people and also being very I mentor a lot. So I've done mentoring in the past with young women coming through and, helping them to build the confidence and feel that kind of influence. And you end up that way with very loyal staff. So I've always had really loyal staff who would, follow me, wherever I went. And I think that is because you're down to earth, you're honest with people, and you realise that, people have lives as well. So it's not just all completely focused on work. Outside, I don't know, outside probably in terms of influence. Well, I have 2 girls, so trying to influence girls nowadays is not always that easy. They're quite strong characters.
Yeah, strong-willed, yes.
Yeah, but I just think, it's exactly the same approach. I don't think I bring a different persona into work. I think it's who I am, it's what I do. And so, being really honest externally as well as internally.
What's the most important leadership lesson that you learned?
Listening. So, for me, it is about, if you don't listen to what people are saying to you, then you don't know what's going on. So really taking the time to get out there, talk to people. I'm always talking to people, making a cup of tea here, what's going on, how's things, and, going out and meeting with our residents and just listen to what people are saying to you. And I think a lot of concerns is where people are just too far away from what's really going on in an organisation. So, it's that early lesson for me, don't ask people to do something that you wouldn't be willing to do yourself, is I think part that stays with me. And that is about, what are you doing, how are you doing it? And I think people are sometimes quite surprised at some of the things I get involved in, because they think, that's really operational, what's she doing that for? But actually that is about getting out there, listening to people. I think that's the biggest quality that you need.
How do you define power?
It's about influence, isn't it? So power, if you're in a powerful position, you have influence over other people. How you choose to use that is, I think, the most important thing. So, if you look at any hierarchy in an organisation, they'll have teams that whoever's leading that really has quite a lot of influence over the people. And that's power to me. And I just think that women are very good. I think they're more empathetic. I think that they have some softer skills. Not all men. I'm not characterising this as everyone. But generally, I just think that they have less ego. They look at how they work with a team and are really part of that team. I've worked with some bosses over the years who, you never saw them. They were just shut away in a room or on the golf course. Just kind of not really leading from the front. And I think that's really important.
And finally, 3 magic tips for success. I'm taking notes here.
Okay, so have confidence in yourself. I think women, as I said, I'm hopeful. I see a difference as those younger generations are coming through. But I think, for some of us who were kind of almost before that empowerment and a bit of the old school, just have confidence that you in your own abilities, because others believe you can do it, so you should believe it. I think number 2 is when you're racing along and people that know me know I work quite fast and there I go, is just remember to look back sometimes and make sure they're with you and they're not miles behind because you've gone too fast and you're suddenly, oh God, where are they all? You need to make sure that you're taking people with you, and you might need to adjust your pace, not completely, because I'll never do that, but you might need to adjust it a bit to make sure that people are keeping up with kind of what's going on. And I think the third one around leadership is enjoy it, because, some people are managers, some people are leaders, and some people are just not, and they don't want to be, and, that's fine. That's absolutely fine. But if you are going to do it, then enjoy it.
Thank you so much, Yvonne. That was really insightful. It was good to get to know how you rose in your career, in your profession, and let's hope we can kind of shine the light and embrace equity and move things forward.
Thank you very much.